A Tale Originals presents
up to some quota, bake their daily bread, swindle some cash or valuables from naive and unsuspecting individuals, or convince some hard-faced client to invest in their company or product. It was a typical big bustling city where the has-beens and the wannabes migrated to and from in order to make something meaningful out of their lives. It was a busy day as usual. In the corner of the breakfast cafe sat a man in a worn-out and almost threadbare suit, who obviously looked out of place amidst the well-groomed men in suits. He was sitting across from a man in a grey three-piece suit, speaking passionately as if trying to convince the man in the three-piece that whatever raw idea he was pitching to him was worth this man's time and, of course, money. The man in the three-piece looked rather bored, as if he could not be bothered with a tattletale, but had to listen to him as politely as he could, just so that he could steal some fragments of the ideas the man before him was spitting at him. He kept glancing at his watch and spooning his tea, probably waiting for this deciduous torture to end sooner than it actually should. Just outside this cafe, at the corner, was a back alleyway, which was dark and harboured the shady dealers who made their living by expertly exchanging small packets of powder and pills for cash. A bump in the shoulder, a handshake, a pat on the chest, an excessive display of running into someone so hard that they drop whatever it is they were holding. All these gestures seemed normal to the unsuspecting individual, but a trained eye would notice the split-second slip and exchange of goods and payments. But if they were not careful enough, they would get hounded by the prying eyes of the patrol cops who were parked a bit farther off from the exchange spot. The cops in the patrol car, a few meters behind, patiently bided their time, waiting for an opening to make an actual arrest. Opposite the spot where the police patrol car was parked, a neon sign flashed brightly, illuminating the cursive words La Belle, which sat atop the shop window in all its fluorescent glory. The shop windows had a whitish hue, which gave the shop's interior a heavenly glow, and the mannequins in the display window were donned in fashionable white pieces, contorted in different positions that would have been quite painful to the human body. Inside, various sophisticated ladies were being doted on by perpetually smiling attendants donned in grey and black dress, transforming the fashion shop into a scene best suited for a black and white movie. Outside, the ladies and women who couldn't afford to go in stared with longing eyes at the mannequins, dreaming of a day when they would be on the other side of the glass. Above La Belle was the community centre for troubled teens, where a few teenagers sat in a circle orchestrated by a psychologist who would engage them in some form of group therapy, urging them to be better versions of themselves. The people in the streets below had no idea that they were being watched by a lone figure, high above in the 64th floor of the Johansson Corporation building. It was an endless stream of buildings and edifices, and they all belonged to one man, Victor Johansson. Victor had been quietly observing passers-by from his 60-inch wide window this fine afternoon, and cradled in his right hand was a wine glass filled with a 1984 Chateau Lafite that had been sitting on his shelf for months, while his left hand slowly twirled to the symphony that was playing on the gramophone he'd compulsorily placed in his office. It was Beethoven's Für Elise, and was one of his favourite classical pieces, as Victor was a man who had much love for music. Music was his anaesthetic and his psychedelic, or so he claimed, and classical music and opera seemed to do the trick for him. Sipping delicious wine and filling his ears with the magical music of a genius, it suddenly struck him how marvellous the streets of London seemed, for he could lay claim to almost all the buildings he could see from his point of view, both far and near, and he marvelled at the empire he had built over the years, like he was seeing them for the first time. In a way he was, as he had never once looked out to appreciate the fruits of his hard labour. And now, looking down on everything he had created, Victor felt like he had raised London itself from the rubble. Mr. Johansson, as he was widely known, both publicly and privately, was a man of strange caliber. He was a man in his 70s, but he looked young enough to be mistaken for someone in his 50s. He was tall for his age and well built, as was one of the benefits of the healthy lifestyle he had incorporated into his daily routine. Wake, meditate, and exercise. It kept him sane in a world full of chaos and strife, for that was what the corporate world was characterized by: viciousness. Which was all the more reason why Victor had taken the reins and created the rules. For if you created the rules, you couldn't be harmed by them. He created rules that benefited himself alone. In some ways, he was feared by almost anyone who came across him, but was also widely celebrated for his successes in the business world. He could name almost all the buildings and companies that he could see from his bird's eye view, because he had built them, or helped build them, and the names flitted across his mind as he took a look at them one by one. Wentworth, Paisley, Labelle, St. Sabines, Skyhave, Froth Cafe. These were only some of the edifices he had added to London's map. It was not an easy task, and not all were achieved through honest work. Although hard work was involved, he'd had to soil his hands to achieve this empire. He had mastered the art of manipulation, as being in that line of business required such skills. And sometimes he just liked to get his hands a little dirty. It was Victor who pulled the most strings, because he was a man that believed that he really couldn't depend on others to do the job as well as he wanted. Victor was awoken from his euphoric reverie and gloating by the sudden wail of his mobile phone. He paused, his face twisted in a frown of annoyance at the interruption from his silent reverence of the work of his hands. And as if thinking better of ignoring the call to admire the streets of London, he took 2 long strides, well, as long as his legs could take, to reach his phone, which vibrated urgently on his desk, and he tapped the green answer button right before his phone stopped ringing.
Mr. Johansson,
called out a scratchy, raspy voice from the other side of the line. Victor instantly recognized the voice as that of Mr. Hugh Crowley, the man working with him on the hospital grant project, who was somewhat his personal assistant. "Crowley," Victor drawled, as if annoyed to hear his voice, even though he had been waiting impatiently at his desk for Mr. Crowley to call him, with updated information about the grant they were working on setting up for a women's hospital that was relatively new.
"Good afternoon, sir. I trust your day is going rather well."
Crowley rasped from the other end. He always sounded like he was about to cough up a huge hairball or very thick accumulated phlegm from his lungs. Victor always assumed that he had been, or was presently, a chain smoker that was now suffering the consequences for a bad, gradually fatal habit, even though Victor had never seen him hold a stick of cigarette. "Just get on with it, Crowley. You never get tired of trying to end me with a great deal of suspense." Victor growled exasperatedly into the receiver of his mobile phone. It did not help that he had been waiting hours for Crowley to call, for Victor Johansson was not a man who liked to wait, or one that was wont to be patient. His Swedish accent was also more prominent whenever he was angry or annoyed, escaping from his mouth with jabbing words, heavy with an intonation strange to the English soil.
"As you know, we've made tremendous progress so far, and we are now in the final stages of setting up the huge grant for that new women's hospital. The major staff are compliant with us, and with the terms we concluded on,"
Crowley said, pausing to clear his throat with a faint Victor knew there was a but coming, and patiently waited for it. Crowley was slowly becoming as predictable as the sunrise.
"But,"
said Crowley, and Victor let a small triumphant smile form on his face before he slipped back into business mode.
"there is some resistance from some of the stakeholders that might be related to your inner circle. They do not feel that we should go ahead with the grant, as it is a totally unnecessary move to them. Why spend so much money on a women's hospital when we can put it to better use on a more profitable project? Well, that's what they think, anyway,"
Crowley explained, as if trying to convince Victor that he had nothing to do with the opposing view of the stakeholders. "What in the bloody hell do they mean by unnecessary?" Victor thundered, And 2 seconds later, his secretary came running in with wide eyes. He dismissed her with a wave of his hand, as if to say, "It's not your fault this time."
Well, sir,
Giving that hospital a grant is a huge step in the right direction. It's a new edifice, and a lot of companies will be looking to have their names attached to it. So why can't Johansson Corps be one of the first, if not the very first? The women's hospital is in an obvious need of help, and being relatively new, they hardly have all the necessary tools needed to start major operations and function. Why refuse them help when they need it the most? Besides, this is the 21st century, where anything related to helping, accommodating, or even a slight inclusion of the female gender is more than welcome. So why are those blockheads saying it is unnecessary?
Victor ranted in one breath, emphasizing the last word with much dislike, as if it had done him much harm. There were a few seconds of silence on the other end, as it was obvious that Crowley did not know how to adequately respond to Victor's tirade.
Sir,
Crowley stammered at the other end, and his voice seemed scratchier than usual.
Crowley, I didn't hire a fool and a dumb twat, did I?
Victor asked with a sudden low voice.
no, sir, you could never make that mistake.
Crowley whispered back, sensing that a slip of the tongue on his part could spell doom for him.
Then make it happen. I don't care about the stakeholders. They will see soon that they made a big mistake,
he said with an air of annoyance.
But, sir,
And Crowley,
sir,
do whatever it takes.
For only $9.99 a month, you'll get full access when signing up at atale.app, iOS app available in App Store. So click and sign up now. atale.app. Let the adventure surround you.